I'm going to give you a timeline. As we've heard from Li Jianhua, the London meeting follows on from China-US negotiations in Geneva on the 12th of May. Now, both sides agreed to pause their dispute for 90 days and reduce tariffs. US duties fell from 145% to 30%. China reduced its tariffs on US goods from 125% to 10%. China also agreed to roll back the non-tariff measures it had imposed on April the 2nd. And that included export controls and anti-dumping probes into US. Sorghum, it's a type of grain, poultry, rare earth elements as well, and some optical fibres. But on May the 30th, President Trump accused China of violating the Geneva Agreement, claiming Beijing had failed to remove non-tariff barriers as promised. China rejected this accusation. On the 2nd of June, the Commerce Ministry said all agreed measures had been suspended. Beijing also criticised the US for imposing what it called discriminatory restrictions targeting artificial intelligence chip exports, software sales and visas for Chinese students. 3 days later, tension eased during a phone call between President Xi and President Trump. Both leaders reaffirmed their commitment to the Geneva Consensus. President Xi urged Washington to reverse what he called negative policies toward China and to keep communication channels open to avoid misunderstandings. President Trump said Chinese students were welcome in the US and reaffirmed America's commitment to the One China principle. Jeff Moon is a former assistant US trade representative for China.
The phone conversation was crucial because apparently at the working level there was a deadlock. There are a couple of good reasons for the leaders to talk, a couple of good reasons for them not to talk. But generally speaking, in U.S.-China relations, the two top leaders speak when they want to ratify something that has been decided below or when they want to clear out a deadlock. So there was clearly a deadlock. There was a misunderstanding over what was promised at Geneva on May the 12th. There were two things that were decided. One was to lower tariffs, and the other one was to roll back retaliation. And exactly what was going to be rolled back with respect to rare earths was not clear to both sides. And I think that the leaders needed to talk about that and tell the negotiators to go back to the table with some renewed instructions.
Now, global markets seem to be pinning their hopes on these talks. Can these negotiations get the two superpowers back on track?
I think they'll definitely get, back on track in terms of the bilateral negotiations. I don't think that any major decisions are going to be reached or announced. I think the major accomplishment of this meeting will be to come to some common agreement on what the rare earth terms were. The president's director of the National Economic Council was on U.S. TV within the last hour, and he said that the Trump administration is basically looking at a handshake. That's his word, not mine. A handshake understanding as to how we move forward on the rare earths issue. That means, practically speaking, we're probably not going to get a document. We may not even get a formal announcement, but at least to the extent that we're beyond this and moving on, that's positive. And by the way, we're into a 3-month period, a pause period, and we've already wasted a month just talking about this, not even getting to the real issues between the two countries. So we really need to get beyond this and move on.
Well, as you say, we're partway through that 90-day truce, reducing the new tariffs between the pair to 10%. So is that handshake you speak of, is that the best outcome we can hope for? And what could possibly go wrong?
Well, that's all that the Trump administration says that they're looking for. They're not trying to memorialize anything, which would take a lot more time. What could go wrong is that clearly we could descend into we could spiral down into retaliation. After there was this misunderstanding, let's call it, about rare earths, the United States announced various measures that could be interpreted as retaliation. And if we get into a retaliatory cycle, then that would be very negative for the bilateral negotiations and for world markets.